You ever notice how being broke feels expensive? Not just stressful, not just uncomfortable, but mathematically punishing. Like the world charges you extra just for not having enough. That's not a feeling. That's not bad luck. That's arithmetic. Because the truth most people never see is this. Poverty isn't just a lack of money. It's a multiplier. And today, I'm going to show you why people with less money end up paying more for the exact same life, often double, sometimes triple. And why the system is built so that once you fall behind, the math itself starts working against you. This isn't about motivation. This isn't about discipline. This isn't about budget better. This is about numbers. And numbers don't care how hard you work. Let me start with a simple question. Why does someone with money get discounts, while someone without money gets penalties? Think about it. If you have savings, you buy things up front. If you don't, you finance them. And the moment you finance something, you've already agreed to pay more than it's worth. That's the first hidden tax of being broke. You rent your own life. Take the most basic example: transportation. A person with savings buys a reliable used car in cash. No interest, no monthly payment, no stress. A person without savings buys the same car with a loan. High interest, long-term, insurance requirements, fees. Two people, same car, very different math. By the time the loan is paid off, the second person has paid thousands more for the privilege of not having money at the start. That's not a moral failure. That's a financial trap. Now multiply that logic across everything: housing, food, healthcare, education, banking, insurance, time. The less money you have, the more expensive your existence becomes. Let's talk housing. Someone with capital puts down a strong deposit. Lower mortgage rate, lower monthly cost, more flexibility. Someone without capital rents, and renting feels cheaper month to month, until you do the math over 10 years. Rent never builds equity. It never stabilizes. It never ends. You're paying 100% interest forever. You don't own the asset. You don't benefit from appreciation. You don't lock in costs. You just pay and pay and pay. Being broke means your biggest expense produces zero return. Now let's talk food. Someone with money buys in bulk, plans ahead, has storage, chooses quality. Someone without money buys small quantities, pays higher unit prices, shops reactively, buys what's cheapest today, not what's cheapest long term. Same calories, different cost. And when money is tight, time becomes tight too. You can't drive further for better prices. You can't compare options. You can't wait for deals. Urgency becomes expensive. That's another hidden cost of being broke. You lose the ability to wait. And waiting is where savings live. Now let's talk banking, because this is where the math turns predatory. If you have money, banks reward you. Higher interest on savings, lower fees, better credit terms, better service. If you don't have money, banks penalize you. Overdraft fees, maintenance fees, minimum balance penalties, high interest credit products. You don't pay fees because you're irresponsible. You pay fees because the system extracts value from instability. One overdraft becomes two. Two become four. Four become a negative spiral. And once your account goes negative, everything costs more. Bills bounce, late fees hit, credit scores drop, interest rates rise. Now every future purchase costs more. That's the compounding math of being broke, not compounding wealth, compounding punishment. And credit scores, they're not a measure of responsibility. They're a measure of how cheaply the system is willing to sell you money. If your score is high, borrowing is cheap. If your score is low, borrowing is expensive. Same loan, different price. So the person who already has money gets cheaper access to more money, and the person who doesn't pays a premium just to survive. That's not coincidence. That's design. Now let's talk time, because this is the most overlooked cost of all. Being broke steals time. You spend more time commuting, more time fixing old things, more time dealing with problems money would solve instantly. A car breaks down? That's days of lost productivity. A medical issue? That becomes a crisis. A missed bill? That turns into hours of phone calls, stress, and damage control. When you don't have money, every small issue becomes a large event. Time is money, but only if you have enough money to protect your time. And this is where the math gets brutal. Wealthy people don't just earn more per hour. They preserve hours. They buy back time. They outsource friction. They prevent problems before they exist. They pay once, while everyone else pays repeatedly. That's why wealth accelerates, not because rich people are smarter, but because their math works in one direction, while everyone else's works in reverse. And here's the part most people never realize until it's too late. Being broke doesn't just cost more money, it costs more future money. Because every extra dollar you spend on interest, fees, penalties, and inefficiencies is a dollar you can't invest. And investments are where the math flips. But if you're stuck paying double for everything just to live, you never get to the point where compounding works for you. You're always feeding the system instead of escaping it. And the system is very patient. It doesn't need to crush you all at once. It just needs to keep you busy enough, stressed enough, and indebted enough that you never stop to question why the math feels rigged. But it is rigged. Not against effort, not against ambition, against starting without capital. And once you see that, something important changes. You stop blaming yourself for struggling in a game where the entry fee is invisible and the penalties are exponential. Because the real problem isn't that people are bad with money. It's that being broke has interest. And the interest rate is brutal. And once you see this pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. You realize that being broke isn't just about having less money. It's about being forced into worse math at every single step of life. Because when you're broke, time becomes expensive. You can't wait for sales. You can't buy in bulk. You can't choose the cheaper long-term option. You're constantly choosing the option that solves right now. And right now is always more expensive. This is why poor neighborhoods have higher prices for basic goods, smaller stores, higher margins, fewer choices. This is why payday loans exist. This is why rent-to-own stores still operate. This is why overdraft fees make billions every year. The system doesn't need you to fail spectacularly. It just needs you to stay slightly behind. Because staying slightly behind is incredibly profitable. Think about interest for a second. When you have money, interest works for you. When you don't, it works against you. A wealthy person earns interest for simply waiting. A broke person pays interest for simply existing. Same mechanism, opposite direction. If two people buy the exact same car, one in cash and one with a loan, they don't pay the same price. The person with cash pays the sticker price. The person without cash pays the sticker price plus years of interest. Same car, different math. And this repeats everywhere. Insurance premiums are higher when you're poor, not because you're riskier, but because you have fewer options. Late fees stack, penalties compound. Credit scores drop, which increases future costs, which causes more late payments. It's a feedback loop. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Once you fall into this loop, the system assumes you belong there. It prices you accordingly. Your phone plan costs more. Your bank charges you more. Your loans are more expensive. Your margin for error disappears. Not because you're irresponsible, but because the system sees you as predictable. And predictability is profitable. That's why financial advice often feels useless to people who are struggling. Because advice like invest early or avoid debt ignores the math of survival. You can't invest money you don't have. You can't avoid debt when emergencies are inevitable. You can't play the long game when the short game is killing you. The system knows this. It doesn't need everyone to be wealthy. It needs most people to be just stable enough to keep paying. That's the real trap. And here's where the illusion becomes dangerous. People start believing the narrative that their situation is a personal failure, that they're bad with money, that they lack discipline, that they just need to try harder. But effort doesn't change math. You can work twice as hard and still lose if the equation is stacked against you. This is why two people can work the same hours, earn similar incomes, and end up in completely different financial realities. One had early access to better math, the other didn't, and that access compounds. The person with a cushion can take risks. The person without one cannot. The person with savings can wait. The person without must rush. The person with capital can buy time. The person without pays for speed. Speed costs money. Time makes money. That's the rule. And once you understand that, something shifts. You stop obsessing over motivation. You stop blaming yourself. You stop chasing quick wins. You start realizing that the real goal isn't getting rich. It's escaping bad math. Because once you escape bad math, everything gets easier. Bills stop multiplying. Fees disappear. Options open up. Decisions become flexible. And flexibility is the real form of wealth. This is why the first meaningful financial milestone isn't a luxury purchase. It's slack. Slack in your budget, slack in your time, slack in your decisions. The moment you don't need to solve everything immediately, the equation changes. You stop paying double. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The system doesn't help you reach that point. Because once you do, you stop being as profitable. You stop generating penalty fees. You stop needing emergency credit. You stop making desperate choices. So the system never teaches you how to cross that line. It teaches you how to cope instead. Manage your debt. Optimize your payments. Use rewards responsibly. All of that keeps you inside the loop. Breaking out requires something different. Not perfection, not discipline, not extreme frugality, but awareness of the math. You don't need to win the game immediately. You just need to stop playing the worst version of it. Even small buffers change everything. A few months of expenses changes your negotiating power. A paid-off bill changes your monthly math. One less obligation reduces future risk. This is why the first dollars you save feel useless. They don't change your lifestyle. They don't make you feel rich. But they quietly change your position. And position is everything, because once you're slightly ahead instead of slightly behind, the system starts working differently. Interest shifts direction, fees vanish, choices expand. You move from reaction to strategy. That's when compounding finally starts working for you instead of against you. And no one talks about this because it doesn't sound exciting. There's no viral hook in reduce negative compounding. But that's the real secret. The math of being broke isn't about stupidity. It's about starting in a position where every move costs extra. And the moment you see that clearly, the shame dissolves. You realize this wasn't about effort, it was about structure. And once you understand the structure, you can navigate it slowly, imperfectly, but intentionally. You don't need to escape the system overnight. You just need to stop letting it charge you twice for the same life. Because the moment you do, the math starts to shift. And when the math shifts, everything else follows. If this changed the way you see money, leave a comment and tell me what part hit hardest. And if you want more videos breaking down the hidden mechanics behind money, debt, and power, subscribe to the channel. Because the system isn't going to explain itself. But once you understand it, you don't have to stay trapped inside it.